What's up YouTube? I'm Vaughn and this is the Gear channel where we discuss collectibles, hobbies, competitive games from tabletop to video games, and today we are discussing something that many of you guys actually voted on, and that is the game state and card memory. So importantly, we're going to discuss what does the game state and the cards retain in memory during the game play. But first, friendly reminder to definitely like and subscribe, and especially subscribe if you guys want to enter in our giveaway. So first off, the game state remembers every single action that occurs during the match, and also there are a few cards that rely specifically for the game state. So let's talk about summon limit. So this is why if your opponent summoned twice and you activate summon limit afterwards and it applies and your opponent can't not summon anymore, is because it follows the memory of the game state. Now for cards, it's very different. Cards remember two things. Now, there are temporary memories, but permanently, it's always two things. The most current or recent summoning that the card has done, and the change of location. Now, example, if you normal summon a 7-color fish, it will remember that it was normal summon from hand, and the location changed from hand to field. Now, if the monster was destroyed and sent to the graveyard, it will remember that it was normal summon, and it was sent from the field to the graveyard, but it won't remember the specifics of the normal summon, even though we all know that normal summons occur usually from hand to the field. But 7-color fish will only retain the memory that it was normal summon and that it was sent from the field to the graveyard. Now, if you go and activate Monster Reborn, now since it's a new summoning, it will only recognize the most recent way of being summoned, which is now special summon from the graveyard. So it will remember that it was special summoned from the graveyard, and the change of location is grave to field. Now, the game state will remember that that was the card that was previously normal summoned, which is very important, because if we were relying on the memory of just the cards, that means we'll be able to normal summon as many times as we want. Now, let's talk about dealing with materials as well, and what kind of memory change depending on location change as well. So let's say we tribute our 7-color fish to summon a summon skull. Summon skull will now remember that it was tribute summon and will remember the material that was used for the tribute summon. 7-color fish will remember that it was tributed for the tribute summon of summon skull, and that was the change in the location of field to the grave. Now, what will happen if your opponent does DD Crow on the 7-color fish? Now, the only information that the 7-color fish will have will be banished from grave to the banished zone. Now, no summonings changed from the 7-color fish, so it will still retain the memory that it was special summoned previously, but for the location, it will only remember that it was banished from the graveyard to the banished zone. Now, what will happen if some skull gets destroyed? Well, now it's going to retain the memory that it was tribute summoned, but it will lose the small details of what was used as the tribute summon. So the materials is what is considered as the temporary memory, because once the monster changed location or is book face down, it won't retain those type of memories. So it will retain the most basic summoning, but it won't retain any more information like that. So Summon Skull will only remember that it was tribute summon and that it was sent from the field to the graveyard. Now this is very important, especially when you deal with extra deck monsters. So best example is if your opponent, or if you summon a Dragoon and you use a Dark Magician and a Red Eyes Black Dragon, now you're able to use the effect to pop monsters. But if your opponent uses Book of Eclipse to set him and you put it face up, the only information Dragoon will retain is actually that it's fusion summoned, but won't retain the materials though. And that's the thing that's interesting. Now, a lot of people will be like, no, it's going to be considered only as a special summon, no longer as a fusion summon, which is not true. And some of you are going to argue like, no, it will still retain their materials because of the Synchro, which we're going to get to in a second. But no, if these monsters change the location or book face down, it will only remember the bare minimum. So Dragoon will remember it was fusion summoned, but won't remember the specific on how or what was used as a material, so you won't be able to pop. Now, same thing is applied to DPE. If you book a moon a DPE and flip it face up, and you use Destiny Fusion for it, during the end phase, it won't be pop because one, it won't actually remember that it was used the specific way for fusion summoning, but also same thing with the fusion destiny, no longer recognizing it to be the same card. That's also another thing. Also, most importantly, if we look at one of the most competitive versus cards of Ice Mirrorjade versus Fairy Tail Snow, we have actually seen this a lot. So if Fairy Tail Snow books a moon, a Ice Jade that was fusion summoned and then destroyed by battle, it gets flipped face up, it's still considered as a fusion summon. It won't recognize what were used for the fusion summoning, but it will still remember it was a fusion summon. So you would be activate to activate Ice Mirrorjade's effect, even though if it was booked of moon. Now for desynchro, now the ruling with desynchro that a lot of people will be confused on is that if you book a moon, a Stardust Dragon, and you flip it face up, you can still desynchro it. Now I know some of you are like, how is that possible? If I just said that it loses the memory of the materials, is because desynchro doesn't focus on the synchro monster remember what was used as a material. It returns a synchro monster. It focuses on the monsters in the grave to actually remember, because even though Stardust forgot, the monsters in the grave are still going to remember that it was used as a synchro material for a Stardust Dragon. And also what can support this as well is actually the game state as well, remembering this also, but it has nothing to do of Stardust actually remembering what was used as materials. And that's why you can still use desynchro on a Stardust Dragon that was just previously booked. Now let's talk about more changing location like returning. So returning, like I said, pretty much as long as you don't commit a new summon on the card, it will always remember the previous summon. So let's say Omega, which uses the effect to banish and return it on the next standby phase, why it will still be considered or remember it as being a synchro summon is because it returned. So it didn't create a new summoning, so it would still remember the most previously summoned that it committed, which is a synchro summon. Now there are some issues that, let's say you special summon from the banish to the field and then you somehow it gets banished again, then that's a different story and it won't return because it will no longer recognize or remember of it being banished because of the previous effect. And the most recent memory that it would have would be special summon from the banish instead of being banished by its own effects, so it won't return on a standby phase. Now, same thing, returns can occur differently for the graveyard. So let's say you have a breakthrough skill that was sent to the graveyard this turn, and your opponent DD Crows it, and you use the Power Exort to go and return it to the graveyard. Now, the only information that breakthrough skill has is that it was returned from the banish to the graveyard because that is the most recent change in location. So you can actually activate breakthrough skill on the same turn, even though it was sent previously that turn, because it only follows, like I said, the most previous change of location. And that's it for the memory of game state and cards. Now I hope you guys enjoyed today's video and I hope it helps a lot. Now remember, this is only towards TCG rulings and not OCG. There's some of these rules that you won't be able to apply for the OCG, and there is going to be a lot of rules you could get away in the OCG that you can't do in the TCG. Now, friendly reminder, like I said, definitely like and subscribe, and especially subscribe if you guys want to enter in now giveaways. And if you want a sneak peek of future products we're planning to review here on the channel, you can follow me on my Instagram, VaughnGear. I'm Vaughn, and this was the Gear Channel.